will sing, while millions join the theme. I will sing. Oh, this is Christ the King, whom shepherds guard and angels sing. Haste, haste to bring him, Lord, the babe, the Son of Mary. This is Christ the King, whom shepherds guard and angels sing. Haste, haste to bring him, Lord, the babe, the Son of Mary. Come, oh, come to Bethlehem. Come, bring your praise to him, the King of glory. Come and make a joyful sound. Come, bow before him now. Our King is worthy. We adore you, Jesus. We adore you, Jesus. God who loves us, born to save us. We adore you, Jesus. Come, oh, come, Emmanuel. O God of Israel, our hope forever. Joy of every longing heart, come, find us where we are. Come, be our Savior. We adore you, Jesus. We adore you, Jesus. God who loves us, born to save us. We adore you, Jesus. Son of David, God our Savior, King of glory, you are worthy.
You're the Son of David.
Son of David.
I don't know.
There'll be more time to talk afterwards. Can everybody find a seat, please? We're on a tight schedule. Everybody find a seat. Carter Jones. All right. Well, we're going to go ahead and get started because we have a tight timeline here. We got 45 minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. It's not on? Kim. Can y'all hear me? Okay. All right, we're going to get started. Could everybody please wrap up your conversations and sit down? That would be amazing. Is someone else talking? Someone else's mic is on. Am I good? All right. Thank you all for being here. The theme of this class time here now is celebrating the past and casting vision for the future. We're celebrating 25 years of Grace Chapel, and for me, that's kind of crazy to think about because, I've been here my entire adult life, which is about 8 years. So I'll regularly talk to people and tell them that I've been here for a really long time, and then they'll tell me that they were here the day the building was built. And there's some people here today that were here that helped plant Grace Chapel from North Atlanta, and I'm grateful because the first day I walked in, I still remember talking to Houston Oliver, who shared communion this morning, and I thought it was such a small world because his grandfather and his father actually taught me at Harding. And so I had an instant connection to Houston, who also went to Harding, and that is where I met my wife. And so Grace Chapel's been a huge part of our adult life, and I'm so grateful to celebrate and have guests here. They're going to share some of the history, and then Rob that's going to cast some vision for what the future is looking like for us going into 2025. At this time, I want to welcome Kurt Picker to the stage. Kurt was the original lead minister when Grace Chapel was planted, and he is going to share a little bit about his experience coming into Grace Chapel.
What you see on the screen is a proverb that isn't just some nice words. It has become really my way of trying to see what God's doing in life. What's right? Oh, it's not on yet. There we go. I'm pushing the button. There it is. I'm looking at something back there, different. Okay, good. It is a proverb that says, a man plans his way, but God leads and directs his steps. And I've experienced that in my life, and that's how God got me from Houston, Texas to Georgia. It wasn't on my bucket list at all. I'd started a church, helped start a church in Houston. We were meeting in a small school, and then we grew over 18 years as I was their preacher, grew to about 700-800, and things were going well. And one thing that I've realized is that God accomplishes what He accomplishes through people. He could do it without us, but He loves to work His plan through us. And so this guy comes along, Jerry Jones. Dr. Jerry Jones was the head of the Bible department when I was at Harding University, and we've stayed close over the years. He's been a real mentor of mine, and he comes to the West Houston Church with his wife Lynn, and they do the Marriage Matters seminar. I'm sure many of you have been to that seminar, and he's talking to me. He says, "Well, Pick, are you going to retire here?" And I said, "I don't know. I hadn't really thought much about it." He said, "Well, you're getting old." And I said, I'm only in my 40s. He said, "Yeah, but you get in your 50s and definitely in your 60s, and no one's going to hire you to preach, Like, okay. And he said, "So if there was one thing you could do, something else, what would it be?" And I said, "Well, I think I'd like to maybe plant another church." And he said, "Okay." So he leaves. God uses him, and he goes to the North Atlanta church about 2 weeks later, and he meets this guy. Many of you know Jack and Bernie Coger. Amazing couple. I love them so much. And Jack comes to Jerry and says, "Jerry, we're starting a church up in Forsyth County north of here, and we need a preacher. And we need someone that's done it before. You have any idea who we could get?" And Jerry says, "I got just the guy." And so he gives him my name. Well, while all that was going on, the elders where I was preaching, had been for 18 years, they could tell there was just a little anxiety in me. Everything was comfortable. Everything was good. And Rob's message this morning about God wants us to be on an adventure, I kind of felt like my adventure at West Houston was almost over. It's like, I don't know, everything's good. And so I was like, well, I don't know what God wants me to do. And so the elders said, "Why don't you take a sabbatical? Take a week off before Thanksgiving, stay gone all the way till after New Year's, and I was like, are you guys firing me or something? No, everything's good. Just go find out what God wants us to do and where we're going. And I said, okay. So I get a reservation for a cabin up in North Carolina, and I'm just going to go be with God by myself before Thanksgiving. And I'm ready to go do that, and I get this call from this guy, Jack Coker, and Jack says, Kurt, Jerry Jones tells us you're the guy you need to come help us plant a church in Forsyth County. And I was like, what? And so I start talking to him. He says, you need to come see us. And I said, well, I actually have a timeshare up in North Carolina. I'll be driving through Atlanta. I'll come, I'll visit. And I think, there's no way, little church. I got 2 kids still in college, they can't afford to hire me. I've got obligations. I'm making all these excuses, but I think I'll go talk to him. Well, on the way, I talked to Jack, and I stayed with Bernie, and such a sweet couple. And then after that, they introduced me to the search committee, and the search committee's like, we want to talk more. And they take me down to the North Atlanta elders, and I talked with them, and they said, well, we want to talk some more. Why don't we fly your wife down? You go on to the mountains, and when you get back, we'll fly your wife to Atlanta, and we'll visit some more. Well, I go pray to God, and I say, God, is this something you really want me to think about? And I pray about it, and Roxy shows up, and we meet with the North Atlanta elders. And this is supposed to be the most relaxing time of my life, and it turned into the most stressful time. I was like, okay, God, is this what you want? And so in 2 weeks, they offer us the position. And I'm thinking, am I going to go back and tell these elders and some of my best friends, and we raised our kids, that I'm supposed to leave? And so I'm wrestling with it, and Jack comes to me and says, Kurt, I know you're struggling with this. I just have some things you need to think about. First of all, just ask yourself what's best for the kingdom. If staying at West Houston is best for the kingdom, stay at West Houston. But if coming here and helping us do what God used you to do there is best for the kingdom, you need to move here. Well, that's pretty easy, I said, okay, well, if I come, I have one stipulation. You need to have elders in place with a clear vision of where the church needs to go. He said, that'll happen. We'll get some elders from North Atlanta. And he keeps talking about these elders that they're going to send. And Jack and Bernie live here in Cumming. I said, well, Jack, you're going to be one of those elders, right? And he says, oh, no, I'm involved down at North Atlanta with international missions, and Bernie's been teaching kids for 30 years, and we'll be down there, but we'll be encouraging you. And I said, well, Jack, I just have one question you need to ask yourself. And before I even got it out, Jack just kind of lowered his head, and he said, well, shot me with my own gun. And so from then on, God blessed us with this group of men. And like I said earlier, God does His work through His people. And these 3 elders laid a foundation for this church that you need to be thankful for. Jack Coker, Bill Bundy, Ted Matthews. They came, we moved. It was a tough move, but we got here. And they looked at me and they said, okay, what do you think we ought to do? I was like, well, we probably need a place to meet. We're meeting in a schoolhouse. Glenn Robb, who's here. Glenn, where are you at? He's back there in the back. Glenn and Nancy Robb had kind of corralled some small groups up in this area, and they were meeting on Sunday night, but still going to North Atlanta on Sunday morning, and it was going on, and North Atlanta said, okay, it's time. You guys need to be a church up there. Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night, whatever. And so we met with the North Atlanta church one Sunday morning. Everyone that decided we're going, they all just loaded up, got us up on stage, gave us some bags of beans, and said, now go plant the church and plant other churches up in North Georgia. And we were excited, but I wasn't excited because the attendance went down, because several families said, we think we're going to stay at North Atlanta. They kind of had the big church experience, and this little church didn't know if it was going to work. But I said, we need to get us a place that we can call our own. So we, is it up there? No, it's not up there. Did I do something wrong? I see it back there. Y'all can turn around and look. There it is. We rented a 10,000 square foot empty warehouse. Seemed like a good thing to do. We didn't have much money. And county came and said, you can't meet in that building. You have to have a CO. CO, what's a CO? Well, a certificate of occupancy. And so we're like, okay. And so we raised $75,000 to build it out, which I thought sounded like a lot of money. But there was a guy in the congregation who said, you know, I work for a company that builds out buildings, and it's $25 a foot typically to build out an office warehouse space. I did the math. That's $250,000. We can't do that. So I'm thinking, we'll put up some curtains and we'll do this and that. And about that time, this person comes along, Joyce Blackwell. And everyone says, man, Joyce, she's this amazing children's minister. And boy, we got to get Joyce here and it'll be wonderful. And I'm like, yeah, that'd be great. We just don't have any classrooms, okay? And then I met this guy, her husband, Bert. Bert's kind of quiet, unassuming, and I go up and I say, hey, my name's Kurt. He said, yeah, my name's Bert. I said, okay, Kurt and Bert, that sounds good. I said, what do you do, Bert? He says, well, I'm a builder. I said, I need you to meet me tomorrow morning, Monday morning, in a 10,000 square foot warehouse, because the county says we've never had a church in a warehouse, and we don't think that can happen, because if you get in there and something bad happens, it's going to be on us. And he said, you don't worry about that. He just kept, that was his famous reply to every objection I had. You don't worry about that. You don't worry about that. And this morning, we heard that we first are called by God to go on an adventure, and then the adventure leads to danger. Well, I didn't want danger in that way for the congregation, so we started meeting with the county, and we talked with them, and finally got them to the place of saying, okay, we're going to give you a building permit, and you guys are just going to have to do the best you can. But we don't think it's going to happen with volunteers, that's for sure. Well, they sent me to the lady to give the building permit, and she said, okay, we need to put on this application a builder. And I said, well, the church is just we're going to volunteer and we're going to do it ourselves. And she says, well, I maybe so, but we have to have a builder on here. And I said, well, just put my name down. And she said, do you build churches? And I said, well, that's all I do is build churches. And she looked at me and kind of smiled, and she said, I don't think we're talking about the same thing. And I said, just put my name down. And she did. And Bert would meet every morning for 6 days a week for 9 weeks with that guy right there, Dallas Rogers, and me, and there's Hector before he grew his beard. And we would meet every morning for 9 weeks. I said 6 weeks. It was 9 weeks. We would meet 6 days a week, early in the morning, and Bert would say, Dallas, these are the people I need. These are the jobs that need to be done today. Kurt, here's the material we're going to need. We need a licensed plumber, a licensed electrician. We need a licensed HVAC guy. You go get all that. We're going to get it done. Well, I begged. I borrowed. I never stole. Okay? But we came in right at $75,000 budget. And the really neat thing is that when we left after 3 years, we turned the lease over to another church, and they paid us $75,000 for our improvements. Well, it ended up being an amazing place. We worked, you talk about team building. It was the best team building experience I've ever had. And we ended up, the newspaper wrote this article on us saying they couldn't believe it had happened in 9 weeks. The building inspectors said we wouldn't have given a dime that you could have done it with volunteers. But with God, God worked his adventure. And danger? Yeah, there was some danger. OSHA probably would have thrown us out if they'd been there. But no one was hurt. We got the job done. And we started meeting, and the church started growing. And during that time, this is what happened. A tsunami hit all of that part of the world. Over 250,000 people died. And we, meeting in a warehouse, raised $35,000 and built the first phase of the orphanage in Ongold, India, because kids were left orphaned by the tsunami. Well, I'll get back to that in just a moment. But in the meantime, we started a family ministry. John Shamblin, he just had and still has so much energy. And so he started working with the kids. And when we finally got into this building, we hired Rocky Wyatt. And man, I'm telling you, unashamedly, more people have come to Grace Chapel through our youth and family ministry than through anything I ever did as a preacher. That work is a blessing. You're going to hear more about that in just a minute. And Rocky actually gave me some of his time so I could get through this. So we bought the land. Well, Jack Coker goes to Houston and talks to a friend of mine that he'd met whenever they went down the last Sunday I was there, and said, we need some money for some land in the building. And he gets $250,000 from a friend. And I'm telling you this not to say, we need to be indebted to them, just to say God's using His people to accomplish His purpose. I had some plans, but God was directing our steps. $250,000, and so we build this building. And again, volunteers, all the landscaping you see, the irrigation system for all the watering and the drainage system and everything. And some would say, as Richard Crowder might say, it was a great day of work, but it's time to get down and get dirty, okay? And we did. And we had a great time building the building that we're sitting in right now. Now, something Rob said this morning that just jumped out at me. He said, God didn't call all of that to happen for us to just be. He didn't call us to just be, but He called us to be sent. And when I came, the idea was we're going to be a planted church that will be planting churches. And Roxy will tell you, when things get comfortable, I get uncomfortable. And I was uncomfortable. It's like, we're there. Let's do it. And I was pushing too hard. I'm sure I was. Well, the elders now are talking. You're going to hear about that vision being cast again to plant churches. Well, God had a different plan for me, and it was India. We started going to India. We sent a group to India. They came back and said, we baptized 150 people in 2 weeks. I was like, what? And they said, Kurt, you've got to go. And I said, I'd had a motorcycle wreck. I had intestinal problems. And the doctor, I went and talked to him. Can I go to India? He said, no. You do not want to go to India. And with those stomach problems. Actually, this week I was in the hospital 3 days with stomach problems. And so you can't go. Well, I went back. I said, I can't go. And Wes Bender, some of you remember Wes, kind of cocky kind of guy. He comes to me and he says, where's your faith? I was like, faith? I'll show you faith. I'll go over there and die, It's like, I mean, I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer, but I know you challenge me and, you want to push-up contest, anyone up here? No. I mean, it's just like, that's what I needed. I needed that danger. I needed to say, okay, God, let's do it. And man, when I go, I pray over my food like you will never pray over your food here. I've been 27 times. And God blessed the work that we're doing in India, and it grew, and it expanded. And we built buildings, and we started planting churches, and the orphanage housed over 500 kids over that period of time, and they grew up to know the Lord. And we started Bible schools. And those of you who are here on Mission Sunday, you heard about that. It hasn't stopped, and it started right here. You talk about planting churches. We planted churches in India, continuing all up and down the Bay of Bengal, planting churches. God was saying, Kurt, relax. You have plans. I have better plans. I'll guide your steps. Just trust me. Well, the church in Houston was supporting the work, and they said, man, we're putting a lot of money into this, and we feel like there needs to be someone full-time looking at it. Would you be interested in that? And I said, well, yeah, I guess. They said, we'll support you. And so that friend that gave that money, and another friend, I forgot to tell you, built out the balcony, $150,000 he gave so you guys can enjoy that up there. I'm just telling you, God uses people to accomplish whatever He wants done. Just relax. Well, I say, okay, so I resign after 14 years preaching here, and I start working full-time in India, and things get tough in India. I mean, Prime Minister Modi gets in, he starts shutting down Christian organizations, start taking away visas, and I'm thinking, I don't know if I'm going to be able to continue to do this. Well, we needed to start a nonprofit, so we started 127 Pure, which, if you look at the website, it doesn't look like a Christian website. It just cares for people with leprosy and widows and orphans and people suffering from curable diseases. And anyway, it stands for James 1:27, which says, pure and undefiled religion is to care for orphans and widows in their distress and to keep yourself unpolluted from the world. And so we started that work. It eventually led us up into Nepal, which is north of India. We met this guy, Benjamin. Benjamin knows 7 languages. God introduces me to him, and he says, I just graduated with my master's degree in religion, and I want to tell Nepal all about God, and I want to do what you're doing down in India, and it's COVID time. And so I said, well, okay. I meet him for 15 minutes, and I have to go home because international travel is closing. We're there in March of 2020, and we sent some help, and I'm telling you, the guy just is doing some amazing things. And so he starts planting churches. You see, God's plans and the way He directs our steps are much better than anything we could ever do. And so, because of persecution, I said, we need to go back to what God told us to do. Go make disciples. I was thinking church planting, and Jesus never said, go plant my church. He said, go make disciples of all nations, baptize them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, and teach them to observe everything that I've commanded you, and I'll be with you always to the end of the world, the end of the age. Just go do it. It's an adventure. And yeah, sometimes it gets dangerous, but we're going to keep doing it. And if it wasn't for this church, a lot of that wouldn't be happening. Oh, God could use some other people, but He used you. My challenge to you today is what Rob was challenging us all this morning, is look for the adventure that God is calling you to. And forget about the danger. He'll be with you. And I don't know where you're going to be. Right now, when we're here, we're at this little church up in Dawsonville because that area is exploding. And they've struggled, and we're still struggling, and I feel uncomfortable there a lot of times. But I was sitting over there real comfortable after I resigned. And God said, get out of there. Get out of your comfort zone. Go do something that's going to make an impact for my kingdom. And so we feel like we're doing that. That's how we got here. God will lead you if you'll just follow. Thank you all.
Kurt, thank you so much for sharing some of the history of Grace Chapel. It was fun seeing some of those pictures of people who are still here that helped build this building and build the warehouse. Part of the venture that happened after Kurt left was Rob mentioned a man named Rubel Shelley was here for about a year, and then came Paul Hugabart. And Paul would have loved to be here. He tried really hard to make it here, but instead we were able to record the conversation me and Paul wanted to have. So we're going to hear from Paul. Hey, Paul, it's so good to be with you today as we celebrate Grace Chapel's 25th anniversary. which is crazy that this year is the 25th anniversary of Grace Chapel.
For sure.
But it's awesome to see you and for you to have you here for this special day. Well, I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about, as Kurt Picker left as our first lead minister and he transitioned, we had a time that some that are still here will remember where we had a man named Rubel Shelley, who actually came to speak a few months ago, was our interim lead minister. And during that time, we had a group of people praying over who would be our new permanent lead minister, which obviously led to you. But can you share from your perspective just kind of how you got connected with Grace Chapel and that experience?
Yeah, I'll be glad to do that. First, let me just say I love that I'm having this opportunity to connect with you all this way. I wish that I could be there in person. Just difficult this time of year to get up there with all the other traveling we're doing, visiting family and such. But thankful to have the opportunity to share a little bit. And man, we loved our time at Grace Chapel and still holds such a special place in our hearts. So how do we get to Grace Chapel? Well, had a number of friends who knew that I was at a place where where we were looking for the next thing. I mean, really kind of feeling a movement, I would say, of the Spirit of God within my heart to have an open eyes. We were in Florida at that point in time, kind of Southwest Florida, and so our eyes were open. We were not really looking outside of Florida, but had several friends who said, hey, there's this church in Atlanta you need to think about, just north of Atlanta. It's called Grace Chapel. And so we started having conversations, and really, I was so underqualified for the position of lead minister at Grace Chapel. So when you look at us getting there, I can only conclude it was truly a God thing. There was a vision for the type of person that they were looking for, even with the search committee. And I was younger, I was less experienced, I was probably less educated than that person. So for a number of reasons, I didn't fit the initial mold. And so by the grace of God, he had something different in mind. And then we got to spend 8 years at Grace Chapel, just truly being blessed in the time that we were there. I can remember one of the first Sundays that I was at Grace Chapel, just really being struck by the realization that really I was, I found myself in, I thought maybe in over my head in some ways, and just wanting to very humbly say, I don't know exactly what God's going to do over the next several years, but I hope that we can grow together as God leads us. And over 8 years that happened. An amazing journey.
Awesome. Yeah, I think, was it around summer 2015 that you came?
Yeah, that's right.
So I didn't realize it till later, but that's actually just a few months after my family came, November 2016. So you were just there for a little bit, maybe a year when we started coming. So very cool. Well, can you, I'm sure that this evolved during your time as lead minister, and kind of as you said, it was a new experience for you being the lead minister. But how did you come to the vision that you casted, that a lot of people still know now, of disciples making disciples? How did that vision come to fruition for you?
Yeah, well, first I want to say really so much of that vision was really wrapped up in a team effort, staff and other leaders. But for me personally, just coming back to that place, realizing that I was in a lot of ways in over my head. I mean, I'll keep using that phrase just because it's true. I think pretty quickly I realized this is not a task. Leading this church is not a task that I can do in and of myself. And so it moved me to a place of deep desperation for God and for his intervention, and knowing that's where I should have been all along, is saying, okay, God, I am inadequate to any task in and of myself, but if I believe that through Christ I can do all things because he's the one that brings me strength, and God brings me wisdom and all that. So, it just took me to a place of prayer, really seeking a realization that, at least in my own life, I think I had thought of people who came to church on Sunday mornings as church members. But Jesus had set this goal of not just to be good church members, but to be disciples. As we started thinking about what it meant to be a disciple, to follow Jesus, not simply to learn about him or learn from him, but to learn how to become like him was kind of one of the original definitions that we had. Then
Right.
beyond that, we adopted a definition that's used in the Renew network. The idea of, we're following Jesus, being changed by Jesus, committed to the mission of Jesus. So all of
Right.
that kind of started emerging just kind of bit by bit, as we were asking the question, okay, what does it really mean to be a disciple? Then comes this realization that Jesus then calls disciples to become disciple makers, to be engaged directly with his mission. And, whether that means that every follower of Jesus is specifically making disciples who make disciples, I still don't know exactly what to do fully with that, but every disciple ought to be some way directly connected to the mission of Jesus, supporting the work of Jesus that then the local church body does all together. And so,
Right.
I think that vision emerged just out of a season of first realizing, God, I desperately need you to tell me what we're supposed to be about as your people. And then as he started revealing, well, it was in the old things that he had said, 2,000 years ago, that Jesus had said, Matthew 28, this is what I want you to do. And just reconnecting with those things and saying, okay, instead of trying to reinvent the wheel and be clever, let's just do what Jesus asked us to do. To go and be disciples who make disciples who make disciples, which is why any of us who follow Jesus are here today, because somebody made a disciple. That disciple was me, that disciple was you, and somebody sitting in the church today as well.
Yeah. I mean, it makes perfect sense to me hearing it now, but I still remember the first time it really clicked with me about, because I guess I grew up in a church and in a way where it was like, go to church, be a good Christian, kind of fill your own cup and live a life for God. But the idea that, no, that's not all you're called to. You're also called to go spread the good news. You're called to
Amen.
go disciple other people. And I think that's something that has been consistent with Grace Chapels. We have an unbelievable group of members and people who are pouring into others. And they may not realize that they're disciples, but they are. The people who are just loving other people and taking care of people and talking to them about God and sharing their own story, that's being a disciple. And we're called to do more of that and make more disciples. So I love that. I love that vision. Well, tell us a little bit about what you've been up to for the last year and a half or so now down in Florida. We miss you, but we're excited to hear about what you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, more of the same. To say, okay, the idea is that I want to help lead another group of people to discover that our call has been to make disciples all along. Especially when you think about the North American church. The North American church has often been labeled the consumer church. We think the church is all about us and what we can get to church, but church is what teaches us how to give to others around us. And we're the ones that are called to, again, share the good news of Jesus with others. And so, more of the same, leading, trying to actually working within a revitalization setting. So a church that was dying, to say, okay, if we bring this type of energy and enthusiasm into a church that was dying and within a few years would have probably closed its doors, can we see that new life and that new emphasis on the mission? Can we see something grow out of that? And we're beginning to, have been for a while, and that's exciting. I'm doing more of that, and I'm getting to coach other churches as well, which is exciting through my connection with Renew.org and some with Discipleship.org as well. And so I'm getting to watch it not only here in this kind of corner of Southeast Florida. I'm able to coach 2 churches in Florida now, and then I'm coaching a church in North Carolina and a church out in just north of Dallas. And so getting to watch this excitement building about, as we ask the question, what if we were to really in a radically way get back to the things that Jesus asked us to be about all along? What could happen with the church then? And what can happen in the communities around us? And so really that's what I'm investing myself in. What I told God several years ago, I would give the rest of my life to. And I love the fruit that's coming out of that. Not only because of what I'm doing, but as I'm watching what many others are doing. There's just so much fruit in it.
Well, that's amazing. We love you and we're happy for you, even though we miss you. And it's great to catch up and just get to see you, Paul. Well, thanks for joining us this morning.
Yeah, thanks for this opportunity, Nick. God bless you all. Love you all.
Yeah, you too, Paul. I'll talk to you later. Hear from Paul. I've been lucky to stay close with him since he left, and he was ministered to me personally. Quickly, I want to welcome Rocky to the stage since we're running close on time here. Rocky.
I grew up in Nashville, Tennessee, and never in my mind did I think I would be a youth minister. And I had a wonderful youth ministry experience. Grew up in a family that taught me about Jesus, so I'm very grateful for that. And yet here I am, youth and family minister at Grace Chapel, and I want to do a very quick show and tell of how God has been faithful in my life and through Grace Chapel and youth and family ministry. So this is not Harding. You don't have to go to Harding to go to this church, but a lot of people have gone to Harding University in Searcy, Arkansas, who are represented here. So that is part of my story. I went to Harding University, and in my first semester, I met Brad Jones. Brad, come on up here. Brad Jones and I became quick friends through playing soccer and other things, and so Brad and I were roommates for a couple of years. During that time, just standing right up here, he met Corey Picker. Corey, come on up. Met Corey, and during the time they were dating, and we continued to develop our friendship. Of course, I remember the night, I remember the day when Brad said, "Hey, Rocky, Corey and I, we got this girl you need to meet," and I was like, "I'm listening," but I tried to play it really cool. And when he told me who it was, I knew exactly who it was, because I had already scoped her out on campus. And when he told me, I tried to play it, again, really cool, but I was giddy when he told me about Ashley. Come on up. And I got to take Ashley on a date to see Better Than Ezra performed in Benson Auditorium on Harding's campus. And don't even act embarrassed. That's a great picture of you. And so... That is my real hair. That is not a wig or a perm. Okay. All right. So, met Ashley. So grateful to develop a relationship with her. Fell in love with her. One of our trips home to Houston to meet, be around her family and see where she grew up, I met a whole bunch of other wonderful people, including, of course, her family. And so let me show you a picture of that family. And Kurt Picker, I need you to come back up here because you play a very important part in this story. I'm not naming, obviously, everyone a part of my story, but I do want to say Kurt. Then I remember sitting at a football game. I'm going to have him come right here. Kurt started talking to me, showing interest in me as he does, a godly man. And also, a cool part of the story is Kurt and Ashley's dad grew up together in East St. Louis, childhood friends, went to Harding together, then were raising their families together in Houston. And so this is like a lifelong friendship that then led to, that led to me getting to sit in the bleachers at a football game and talk to Kurt Picker. And Kurt was like, "You're at Harding, what are you studying, blah, blah, blah." And he said, "You need to take more Bible classes. You just never know if God might call you into ministry or something like that." So I was like, that's a good point. So I did. Got a second major in vocational ministry. And so after graduating from Harding, I worked at Harding for a few years. And I was like, this is terrifying. I don't know what in the world I want to do with my life. Kurt called me in 2005 and said, "Hey, man, would you want to be," because of our relationship, he performed our wedding. And so deep friendship here. He said, "Would you consider coming and being a youth minister here?" Remember, I told you way back there in Northside Church of Christ in Nashville, I had a great youth ministry experience, but I didn't think I wanted to be a youth minister until Kurt called, and I was like, well, hey now, let's talk about this. And so as one thing led to another, I ended up, and by the way, Brad and Corey were here as a part, helping build out the warehouse, build out this building, and on and on and on. So, and then what's the next part of the story? So, you know what happens next. Then some kids came along. That got real awkward. Shep, Haven, Camp, come up here real quick. Grew up in this church family. This is the only church family they've known. And so you stand right here, Ash. Then came Camp, Shep, Haven, and and they are a product and fully a part of the GC family. And so you guys have helped form them into the people they are. The disciples that you see before you all have chosen to follow Jesus are a large part because certainly we are trying to invest in them and their discipleship, but because of many, many, many of you and these guys and just an incredible network of people who have created this crazy, nutty family of youth ministry who we're investing in the Grace Chapel family, but you're investing in us. Many people I've met who have been incredible teenagers, and one of those developed a really special relationship with, came to us as a middle schooler, then was a part of his graduation, and now we get to be a part of each other's life. Ben, come on up. Come stand right here, Shep, stand right here. Ben Patterson came to us. Yo, yeah. Ben showed interest in wanting to be involved in ministry and helping out. How can I help? How can I serve? And one thing led to another. Ben is now full-time on church staff because people were investing in Ben because people invested and people invested and people invested. So Ben and Todd Whitaker and Darren and many others are now investing in my own boy, in one of my kids. And Todd Whitaker, who is one of Shep's small group leaders, has a son. John Allen, that is not two girls there. That is John Allen in the blonde curly hair. I got to talk to John Allen last week, who is working towards becoming a licensed counselor to help families, marriages thrive. And he called me to say, hey, I got some questions I want to ask you about how this. And so I got to pour into John Allen, who is the son of the man pouring into my son, who is working a lot. You see what I don't have to repeat it. You get the picture. Guys, what we're doing here is making eternal difference. And I'm just one story. I'm just one guy who gets to be a part of a family, a culture, a group of people, a tribe who have said, this matters, and we're going to put a lot of energy, money, resources, investment in raising up the next generation who will know and love Jesus Christ, who will take it to the next generation. Thank you for making that possible. Thank y'all. Love you.
At a time that if you have children, they've got people that have volunteered to teach them, but that time is up. So if you've got kids and you need to leave to get them so we're not stressing those people out, do that. I'm going to go through a couple of things here. One, just as we turn into looking towards the future, it's been thanks for everybody that was up on stage and shared, and it's incredible. I wish I could hear everybody's stories, maybe. And but this verse came to my mind because it was maybe 18 to 24 months ago. We were able to use just money that we had and money that had been raised for a capital campaign, and part of the idea from that was to pay off the existing building. And so that was done. That happened. We were able to pay off the existing building. But the shepherds at the time that are, for the most part, still the shepherds that we have now, decided that money that we're putting towards paying this building off, we're not going to use that money for anything other than church planting. And so that kind of coming full circle of being a church that was started with the hopes and dreams of starting other churches is, that kind of like put your money where your mouth is. I think that commitment that was made a year and a half to 2 years ago is huge because of this. Where your treasure is, there the desires of your heart will be also. It's not where your heart is, then that's where you'll invest. It's where your treasure is. Where do you start putting that money? And your heart is going to follow that, right? And so we have started to put money. And then I'm not a good saver. I'm really good at spending money. And I hate to see money compile, especially in the church kind of world. It's like we've got a bank account. So we were putting $12,000 a month over the course of a year, up to 2 years. I'm like, we said we were going to use this for church planning. We have got to use it. We got to use it right? So we got connected. I don't know, this might be too small to really see, with Renew Movement. Paul mentioned Renew earlier. Liked Renew Movement as a church planting, what they were going to try to do with church planting because of these 6 distinctives. And I'm going to go into one of them a little bit more, but kind of, a lot of the church planting networks were getting watered down. There's just, let's just plant churches. Doesn't matter. Let's just get them. We want to start more churches. Whereas Renew Movement was saying, no, we got to do it right. We want to do it. We want the church plants to be healthy. We want them to be doctrinally sound, et cetera. It's all a restoration movement kind of thing. So this collaborative approach is the other thing that they found is there's a whole lot of people, a whole lot of churches that were like, yeah, we want to start a church someday. But they would always have this kind of someday when mentality. Yeah, someday, once we get a certain amount of people, or once we bank a certain amount of money, or once we, et cetera, et cetera. And so they're like, well, if we do a collaborative approach, because there's also a lot of fear. When we made that announcement that we were going to put all of that money towards church planting, the only like 3 to 5 comments I got were, are you going to ask me to leave? Right? That's natural. Like wait a minute, what's happening? What does this mean? And so it's not just about resources as far as money goes, but there's an idea about like, oh, we're going to start a church close to us. That means we're going to send 50 of you away or 100 of you away to go start that church. And people are like, but this is my church, right? So we're going to always honor that. Like, if this is your church, this is your church. If God is calling you to go, then that's God calling you to go, right? So this is looking at a collaborative way to do it. That maybe not every church has all of the money they feel like they need to do, or the people power, or whatever it is. But what if you could take a bunch of churches and they worked collaboratively together to make that happen? And so that is what Renew Movement is trying to do. Renew Movement doesn't have a bank account. We don't give them any money, but they're working to coordinate different like-minded churches to help each other start churches. And I can tell you about a couple of those. The Draw Near Church in Franklin County, Tennessee, they currently now have 3 small groups. Their hope is to, in the next couple of months, that those 3 groups will become 5 groups, and on March 31st, they'll hold like their first big launch public service. By the end of this year, we will be officially supporting them financially, but that also means that we'll have some member of this congregation will function as their role will be on their management team, right? So helping out, learning what do they need, how can we be praying for them, how can we help them? They're not too far away. If there's something going on, we could drive a busload of people up there and help them do something to get that church off the ground. And also, that management team person will be learning from them. What are you doing that's working? What are you doing that's effective? Here's a picture of Evan and Katie Berry and their family. I don't have a picture of Kane Atkinson. This is a church plant in Columbia, Tennessee that also by the end of this year we will officially be financially supporting. They've taken a lot of the things that maybe you heard when like Paul was here. He talked about things that were happening in India or South Africa or different places around the world where we've seen disciple-making movements happen. So they're trying to learn from all the principles of those disciple-making movements, say, what if we could do that? What if we could do that here? Not be kind of confined by the trappings of the American church, but just try to spread the gospel in really creative ways. So they would even say that they see their church plant as kind of a research and development kind of thing. And so same thing, we'll have somebody on that management team. We'll be learning from how they are doing things. And then we've got Bharat and Jennifer Raya that live right here in Cumming. Bharat is a guy that God put me in connection with about 6 months ago. And in the last 3 or 4 months, he and I have been weekly meeting, and mostly just to read the scriptures and to pray together. But he came to the U.S. from India with a heart to start a church. Originally to go to the New York City area and do some church planting there, but his plans got changed by God, right? God had a different plan than Bharat did, and he ended up in Cumming, Georgia. And so we met not even under the guise of like any of those things, but it was just we had recently been talking about like trying to find and maybe start, and then it was weird, like over a couple of 2 or 3 Sundays, several people were like, the Indian population's really growing around here, Rob. We need to do something to address that. And Bharat's like, I'm trying to start a church, but I don't have any money. Like, and I was like, I got money. We got money. I got your money. So it just seemed really great. Bharat right now is meeting in his home with a group of people, but we will try to find a time, maybe January, February, where he and his wife and he's got a 19-year-old son that's also here with him. We'll meet them. So just to say that here's the hope, here's the idea, the plan is Acts 1:8, that you'll be my witnesses in Jerusalem and Judea and Samaria and to the ends of the earth. And so Grace Chapel's church planting agenda as set by the Lord seems to be reeling that back in, right? So Kurt shared about how he helped start churches in India. We know, like, through our support of Victorino and the Mexican work, that we've helped to start churches in Mexico. Connection in Colombia, that we've helped start church in Colombia. In just the last couple of years, we've fully supported a church plant in Ukraine. Right? So we've done the ends of the earth, and now this year and in the next couple of months, we're really going to start investing into more of the Judea, Samaria, get involved in regional church planting. And the hope is that in the next 3 to 5 years, we will be sending people out from Grace Chapel to start churches that are even closer to home in our Jerusalem. So that's that. I guess you want to close? Yeah. Any questions? I'll be around.
Ask Rob. He'll be able to answer those for you. I just want to say real quick, thank you so much to so many people who came today that don't come here every Sunday. I was just so excited to see the Chupp family and all of her family and so many other people that made time to be here and celebrate 25 years of Grace Chapel. Since those people are here, if you would like to stay and talk with them and spend some time maybe talking to Kurt and learning more about what he's doing in India, maybe talk to Rob a little bit about his vision for church planting. We have coffee in a fellowship hall, so hang around and stay and chat. We'd love to catch up with you. Thank you.